The 1976 European Championship was a truly unique tournament. Taking place behind the Iron Curtain, just one of the competing countries is still in existence today. It is fitting then that it was decided in a truly unique fashion. The 5th European Championship in UEFA's history, the competition was held in the former communist state of Yugoslavia. There was no chance of qualifying for this tournament through a playoff though, with only 4 of the best making it to the competition. Yugoslavia as host, World Cup champions West Germany, Johan Cruyff's Netherlands, and rank outsiders Czechoslovakia.
It was a good team, but in this Final Four, it was the great outsider. And it was a surprise for everybody.
If the England management are struggling to pick their squad now, imagine how they would have felt if they were in charge of Czechoslovakia, whose selection issues ran deeper than just the quality of the players.
It was built on a camp in High Tatras before the championship, before the Final Four. High Tatras, it's something like Little Alpas in Slovakia. And there were good relationships with Slovaks and Czechs. It was unusual.
If the Czechs were underdogs, then on the other hand you have the favourites, West Germany.
They were the defending European champions. They were the defending World Cup holders. It was the Franz Beckenbauer, Sepp Maier team.
Tournaments are won by teams, but finals are often won by individuals. And when the two teams met in the final, it was a story of 2 players, Sepp Maier and Antonin Panenka.
Sepp Maier was probably one of the best players of his generation, in the world. He was probably perhaps the best goalkeeper in the world.
Antonin Panenka was a very technical player. He was slower. He wasn't very quickly, and I think he could have a lot of problems in these times in modern football.
Remember how I said this was a unique tournament, right? The final was no different. Czechoslovakia, the outsiders from the entire tournament, went 2-0 up, but the Germans pulled one back through Dieter Müller. Then, with just moments to go, a refereeing decision that changed the game and the history of football forever.
It was the last seconds and was corner. And the referee, Italian referee, Mr. Gonella, made mistake. It wasn't a corner. And from that corner, did the Germans the second goal and extra time and so on, and penalty and the Panenka penalties.
That wasn't the only refereeing decision to cause some confusion that night. While some players knew that a draw meant penalties, others were preparing themselves for a replay.
Every game would go to, in case of a draw, every game would go to extra time. After extra time, there would be a penalty shootout in every game except the final. The UEFA rules at the time were that you could not decide a major trophy through a penalty shootout. Literally hours before kickoff, the German FA had asked UEFA to change the rules for many reasons. It's a complicated story, but the German FA asked UEFA to scrap the replay and decide the game on penalties if need be.
While the Germans were off not practicing penalties, Antonin Panenka had been practicing something special in secret.
He practiced with his teammates at Bohemians, so the Bohemians goalkeeper, which was his club, would always be in goal and take penalties, and every time he saved a penalty, Panenka would give him some chocolate, and every time he scored a penalty, the goalkeeper would give him some chocolate. Panenka found himself eating quite a lot of chocolate. By the time it came to the final in 76, he really knew what he was going to do. His teammates knew as well, although they were very, very nervous. And he remembers some players saying, "Please don't do it, please don't do it."
Every penalty scored by the Czechoslovakian side was met by a successful German one. That was until Uli Hoeneß, who had missed a penalty in 1974, stepped up and ballooned the ball over the bar. Panenka would have the deciding kick. If he scored, Czechoslovakia were champions. If he missed, we'd go again.
Hardly anyone had ever seen a penalty like that. So it looked to me as if the penalty would go wide of the mark, as if it would miss the goal completely.
Panenka stepped up, the weight of the nation on his shoulders. He strikes the penalty in a way that we've never seen before. He chips the ball straight down the middle. Simple, audacious, genius. Maier was nowhere to be seen as the ball floats into the net. Panenka runs with his hands above his head. Czechoslovakia, the great outsiders, are champions. Any penalty in any final holds pressure, but for Panenka to do what he did, given the pressure, this was revolutionary.
Back then, Czechoslovakia was a communist country, so this idea of doing something so creative and spontaneous, which felt impulsive and impudent, was really counter to what the country's ethos was about. And I asked Panenka what would have happened if he'd have missed that penalty. And he said, well, I spoke to some politicians afterwards, and apparently they said I'd have spent 30 years working down the mines. So the pressure was pretty high for him. He made no mistake, and I think deservedly has this legacy of something that carries his name.